should go forward. I'm sorry to speak in English. I came from Hamburg today to take part in this nice event. I didn't have also the opportunity to understand everything you said. I'm sorry for that. There must be some really interesting topics in the beginning also. So I will try to speak as clearly as possible. I hope my English are sufficient for you to understand me. And if not, and if you have some questions in Lithuanian, then please, someone may help and I can answer afterwards. Or you can also interrupt me anytime. It doesn't matter for me. So my name is Georgios Vagiannis. I came from Hamburg, as I said. I belong to the build professional team there, especially in the international engineering department. And I'm a project manager for international engineering and special projects. And what I came here to talk to you about is green building rating systems. First, we may have some minutes to speak why does everyone speak about green buildings? What is the point behind? Not only technically, but more importantly, business-wise. What are the forces that move the green building industry? What are the most dominant or famous green building rating systems, and how the global market looks like? And we may see also some numbers from this part of the world. I will use the example of the latest version of LEED, and we may also talk about BREEAM if you like. The reason it's not so important, it was only because BREEAM has many schemes, and I didn't know at that time what is the scheme you would like to follow more in Lithuania. And anyway, the way of thinking is the same, so we will be able also to discuss how Uponor can contribute when it comes to green building rating systems or green buildings and for the success of the project. I will show you some references with Uponor certified buildings with BREEAM and LEED. And I would like us to also take a short walk through the World Green Building Council and some recent activities and some recent developments that had happened, especially when it comes to green buildings and how this is connected to performance of the occupants in retail in particular. I've seen the nice presentation also about the shopping mall. I'm sorry I couldn't understand everything, but I could realize it was one. So we may also take a walk through that, see how this scheme is working. Why are we talking anyway about buildings as Uponor, green buildings as Uponor? Is because where we want to be is to provide better human environments to people. And how we do that is that we work with international partners, regionally, locally, and also internationally, to create indoor climate plumbing and infrastructure solutions. So why green buildings? Why is it so important? And I brought you some, I would say, recent studies. One of them is the DLA Piper. This is a study conducted internationally through all over Europe, and some developers, mainly, I would say developers, and mainly in the commercial buildings, took part, so like offices or retail. And they were asked, what do you consider to be the prime benefit of sustainable real estate, so green buildings? Surprisingly, you will see that 38% spoke about value. So the real market understands that green buildings provides higher value, that green building rating system gives them some tools to increase the value of the building itself. Of course, people and thermal comfort play all this important role, but in the end, all projects need some kind of scheme, some kind of business-wise tools to make it more efficient, to make it more attractive to the occupants, to the ones who is going to buy it, who is going to rent it. What is the single most important reason for your organization then to deliver sustainable real estate strategy? The market itself. So the market itself asks for this because the market itself looks ways to differentiate itself from other projects. So who are these forces that drive the green building industry? Is it only the developers? No, as you can see from a study from the World Green Building Council, it's also the tenants that have specific ways of or specific needs when it comes to the building. The owners, because of course very often, especially in commercial building, the owner and the tenant will be different. And they have different things they are looking at, and they have different needs, and all these have to come together into some schemes that should and could be measured to create the value for the project itself. Business benefits, another study expected from green building investments. This is another study from a consultant, an international consultant, also for real estate. And you can see that they also speak a lot about value and costs. So it's not only to make, we know the 3PP, 3PP is the way the World Green Building Council talks about green buildings, so how people, planet, and profit comes together. We see different words also today, how to express that, but the bottom line is the same. We need some tools to address the three most important topics, so the occupants, the people who live or rent the building, the planet, ecological aspects with that, and of course, to make business sense. What are the buildings that are most, I would say, affected from this tendency? It was one of the tendencies that Ravi showed you before about the megatrends, how the future would look like in 10, 20, 30 years, also in the construction and the real estate industry. And we see that commercial buildings are I would say the most common one to see green building rating system. So retail, offices, multi-purpose halls like the one we are here today. There are many reasons why this can happen. One can have also his own, but we would say that following all the literature and what we know from the market itself is because in commercial buildings we see more stakeholders taking place. In residential buildings, very often you have one developer, one constructor who will construct the building, and then it will be the owners who come and buy it. On the commercial sector, the reality is a lot different, of course, as you also know. And this is where we need some measures that, and some tools that can give us special levels that we measure really what is the value of the building itself and what does it bring to the stakeholders. So one organization that moves ahead, that is one of the leading organizations when it comes to green buildings, is the World Green Building Council, and of course it derives directly from the US Green Building Council in that sense. And what they do is to transform the way the building and communities are built. They communicate with a lot of green building councils, also I expect here also locally in Lithuania. And they want to regenerate and sustain the health and vitality of all life within a generation. So why LEED? Because according to them, LEED certification means healthier, more productive places, reduced stress on the environment by encouraging energy and resource-efficient buildings and savings from increased buildings value, higher lease rates, and decreased utility costs. A lot of words, I know. What is more important also to see in this paragraph is the 3 Ps that I mentioned before. So social, ecological, and business, profit. So what are the arguments? One is that green buildings provide a competitive differentiator, as I mentioned also before. There is a study that 61% of corporate leaders believe that sustainability leads to market differentiation and improved financial performance. It attracts tenants I just brought you also a study from San Diego when it comes to this that shows that green buildings that are considered green, so they come with a green building certification, they have more tenants. They are more, let's say, famous or desired to be sold or in the end rented. Are cost effective because they bring many cost benefits like decreased energy costs or utility costs maintenance. They save energy and resources, as I mentioned before. They increase the rental rates, approximately 20% above average. Of course, this number is for the US. I couldn't bring you some numbers when it comes to Lithuania, and I'm sorry for that. But I expect the trend to be also very similar. Make happier employees and occupants. This is really important when it comes to commercial buildings, because if you see the costs that we have in an office building, for example, and if you break it down to operational costs like energy and utilities, and you bring also the costs also devalued through a normal percentage rate, what it costs really to build this building, and then you add up also the cost of the people, so the salaries, and how costly is an employee when he's not feeling well and he stays at home being sick because of also this sick building syndrome that I'm sure you all know about. You will see that 90% of the cost of the building is the people itself. So increasing this productivity and the happiness of the people really makes a big difference when it comes to how profitable a building is. It optimizes health, and of course it is a tool for public relations and community benefits. BREEAM is another organization. It's based in UK. You are aware, of course, also about this. I don't want to spend a lot of time about this because I would like to share with you the way the benefits BREEAM think that green building comes with, and you will see that they speak exactly the same things. These are, again, the same arguments about rental rates, about operating costs, maintenance costs, productivity for the people, competitive advantage of the building against others in the same area. It is like this. If you have an area, maybe you have heard of the Hafen City in Hamburg, a really new district that increased 40% the center of the city. It was built on top of water. And that created some square kilometers to build on, and mainly with offices. And then you really see that one office with another, they are competitors. They are looking for the same pie of the tenants that are available within a city, and each building should have a competitive advantage to attract these tenants. So how does the global market look like? As we mentioned before, the LEED system comes from the US, and this is why it's mainly dominant in the Americas. BREEAM from UK, with also a very high dominance on Netherlands and Belgium and Luxembourg and this part of the world. And also in the Gulf, it's becoming more and more often, though LEED is more common in that part of the world. DGNB, NF, and A is mainly for local Central and West European countries because, of course, of the language barriers. If we want to compare the dominant systems around the globe, for example, let's see BREEAM and LEED. You see mainly that LEED may seem a little bit easier to follow up. It has less categories, and it focuses a lot more, I would say, on energy and water than, for example, BREEAM. Of course, depending, and this is also very interesting, that where the rating comes from, like, for example, the Green Mark or the BEAM Plus, for example, in Singapore or Hong Kong, you see that each rating system locally tries to address the topics that are more important. and this for the region. And this is why, for example, the BREEAM for the Gulf, so the scheme of BREEAM specifically designed for Middle East, has more points that has to do with water, for example, and energy than it does in the UK. Or, for example, you have in UK, you get penalized practically with BREEAM if you have cooling, which of course is not the case in Middle East, because how could you in the end have a building in the Middle East without any cooling? This would be almost insane. If we break it more down to see the different sections that the BREEAM and LEED have points in, and you will see that BREEAM is more, mainly I would say it's more, it could be more circular. LEED has a way of addressing more simply the building itself when it comes to energy consumption and water consumption. They made a big effort with the LEED version 4 addressing also a lot more sustainable sites and transportation. If you remember, maybe version 2009, transportation and sites, they were not really differentiable, and this changed. So they tried also to have the building not by itself, but connected to what is around it, which does more, I would say, BREEAM. The countries that are more active also about BREEAM and LEED, you see that BREEAM is mainly a European tool yet. They made some efforts, as I said, to move it to Middle East and the Americas, but LEED is more international in a way. When it comes to our corner of the earth, meaning Europe, we see LEED is more dominant in the Nordics, in Central Europe and South Europe. Of course, in Central Europe, DGNB is #1 because also of the language, and it addresses better maybe the local conditions. But when it comes to the most dominant international systems, then it is LEED. BREEAM is more in UK, Benelux, and France, maybe a little bit, and East Europe. It has started to get some momentum as we see it in Eastern Europe. So to whom a green building certification talks to? Is it only, for example, for the first case, for the first phase of the project, of the design of the project? No, it has a life cycle basis that addresses the building from not even design phase, even sooner, concept phase, all the way to its life cycle. And of course, after construction. And who? Is it only a designer? Is it only the investor? No, it is, as you may be able to see, a lot of different stakeholders, from the architects to the equipment providers to landscape designers to the tenants, to a lot of stakeholders, that each one of them comes with his own targets. So what is new, as I mentioned before, in the version 4 of LEED is that it has starting to see the building as an organism. They tried more to introduce more things with life cycle assessment than static design. They made a lot of effort to have one global LEED that everyone can follow. If some of you have try to work your way with the previous versions of LEED, you will see it could be challenging sometimes to implement local standards. And when I say local, in that sense, I mean European. Because they were thinking also about their own standards, they were following the Astra standards, so they didn't incorporate in the scheme itself other ones. Now this has changed. ISO standards are also accepted. European standards are accepted. They made effort with the units to accept also both in tools and resources. And they have some new market sectors. But most importantly, we can also focus in the building design and construction, I would say, so addressing the new buildings to be built. As I said, they tried to change from impact categories to system goals. And the reason behind that is that they didn't want to do less harm. but they really tried to provide a scheme, provide some tools to the developers, to the stakeholders of the projects, so that they can do more good. And this changes a lot the way that you address the scheme, the way that you follow the scheme, and the way you implement the scheme. By changing a lot, I would like to focus to the integrative process because, as I also told you in the beginning, I would like also to spend some minutes to show you how Uponor can contribute to that. And integrative process, it has become mandatory in the new LEED version 4. In BREEAM, it's not yet, I would say, mandatory, but you gain a lot of value out of bringing all the stakeholders of the process on all the stages where everybody can bring its specialty and contribute to the success of the project. So they have, in the new version 4, we have seen that they have decreased the minimum program requirements. It seems so. The ones that were before, they didn't just erase them, but they just put them in the points, practically in the prerequisites. So it's not that they were erased, but they make it simpler to follow. So we still have sustainable sites, location and transportation. They focused more into that. Water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, material and resources, indoor environmental quality, innovation. These are the categories where prerequisites and points are gathered, and they added on top integrative process, as we've seen before, and some regional priorities. We will come to this really fast. So I would use the example only on the building construction, building design and construction, because I think that the vast majority of the projects that we also see, it's there. And it's just as an example so that you are aware how the system works. So from the different categories, you have to meet the prerequisites, and then you gather the points. And based on the points you gather for the project, then you are certified. From simple certification all the way up, let's say, to platinum, depending on how many points you get. I can maybe show you just for a moment this one. This is how it looks practically for new construction. And maybe I have to make this a little bit smaller. So, yeah, now it's lost. Sorry for that. Yeah. So, yeah, let's leave it before I destroy it totally. The point is that it may seem that 80 points could be a lot for platinum, but in total there are more than 100, 108, or if I remember correctly. So each project can have its own strategy, practically. So if you want to have a project that the focus is more on water efficiency, what you have to do is, of course, meet, as I said, the prerequisites, but then you can focus and say, okay, I really want to get all the points for water efficiency. Why? Because in the place where I'm going to locate the project, water efficiency is really important. And now, comes to our mind the new thing that comes with LEED version 4, the synergies. By focusing more on water efficiency on a site where water is not abundant, you get also points for regional priorities. And you don't get only points for regional priorities, you get also points for sustainable sites. So things are more connected with LEED version 4. And this is what I wanted you to understand a little bit more when it comes to that. So these are the points mainly that Uponor can help you achieve. by using either indoor climate systems, plumbing systems, or infrastructure. These are all gathered more or less here. What we could see is just go on some specific just to get you to the point how this works practically. So, for example, in the integrative process, prerequisite and points, what we can contribute practically is that we can be the equipment planner, and having an equipment planner in the integrative process can get you the prerequisite practically. Because what you need maximum is 4 for the whole building. And apart from that, we support preliminary energy analysis or water analysis, so you can make the concept of the building more complete already from the beginning. When it comes to rainwater management, utilize stormwater possibilities and reusing the reclaimed water inside the building. So if you would like, for example, to focus more, I know in Lithuania you get a lot of rain, and this water may be washed off in some buildings, but here you can have the opportunity to reuse this water, and then you get points for rainwater management. Indoor water use reduction. Here most interesting would be, for example, to take a look in different loop installations. So it's not only to say, all right, I have tried to minimize as much as possible the water consumption, but did I really take care that the water that I have inside the system is minimized? For example, we know that with loop installation, instead of classic manifold installation, we can have significantly less water inside the system that sits abundant when it's not used. When it comes to energy and atmosphere, renewables, there are many studies. One of them that you may be aware also in Lithuania is the life cycle cost analysis, for example, for TAPS, the thermal active building system with pipes embedded in the concrete, so in the slab itself. So this study was conducted by Mott MacDonald. This is, maybe some of you are aware, one of the leading consultants for HVAC systems globally. And with IDA-ICE, the simulations tool, and they have done this study for 10 different locations around Europe, and to prove that when we speak about life cycle management, life cycle assessment, when we talk about life cycle analysis for our building, then radiant heating and cooling can bring a lot of benefits, not only on the first phase of acquisition, but also on the operating and maintenance costs. Enhanced refrigerant management. Why is this important? Because we have seen that the world is trying to go out from, I would say, very pollutant refrigerants. And Raivis has shown you, for example, before how we can utilize free cooling or utilize the earth, so practically don't need a refrigerant on when needed. Because, for example, for cooling, we can use higher temperature with radiant cooling together with heat pumps and vice versa for cooling. Then we don't need so much power for refrigerants, and these refrigerants then are not so harmful for the environment. So using radiant heating and cooling systems, you can totally go out of really pollutant refrigerants and address also this point. And this comes together, of course, with renewable energy production. Materials and resources, solutions like cut-to-measure pipes or modular construction and prefabrication can really make the difference on site when it comes to waste and, of course, when it comes to scrap, practically. And all this can really help addressing these points. For building product disclosure and optimization, I don't know how much this has penetrated also in Lithuania, but this has become more and more the trend that you need to get some product declarations minimum like 20% depending on the country for your system, for your building, sorry. And if we open this, I can show you, yes. Not visible again. TEPFA is an organization for plastic pipe, European-wide, for plastic pipe manufacturers. What I could show you with this link, and if you follow it also by yourself, you would be able to get an industry-wide EPD, so Environmental Product Declaration Study. So what does this study helps with is to provide you with life cycle cost and life cycle assessment more for all the materials, for example, for the radiant heating and cooling system. And then you can get these points for all 6 environmental factors that you have to use for a life cycle assessment, like climate change or the heat. My English is not helping me here. How the temperature is increased, the climate change of the world. So you can get these factors that you need to put into life cycle assessment directly from this study. And this can help you then practically address directly this topic with environmental product declarations. Again, the same with sourcing of raw materials. We are working also ourselves now on some studies about the recycled content, and you can get directly the factors that you need for the life cycle assessment. And of course, we shouldn't forget that we are also a part of the Global Reporting Initiative, and that means that you can go at any times and look for our environmental footprint and how we address also the climate change topic. When it comes to minimal indoor air quality, I will leave this more to Marcus to talk to you about the Zenfrengen systems and how we can address the indoor environmental quality topic. But we have solutions to provide better indoor air quality. When it comes to thermal comfort, I think all these standards speak by themselves about the benefits of radiant heating and cooling when it comes to thermal comfort. About daylight and acoustic performance, we've seen, for example, before from Rivis, how all these radiators practically block all these nice facades that the architects put in the new design buildings. So what you can practically do is get rid of all these things that make them also very angry, because you destroy their design, and have a system that is not visible practically. Some innovation points, depending on the region, it can be really innovative to have these type of solutions. And we have seen, for example, in project in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, equipped with tabs, that they could get practically all the points because they introduced such an efficiency system. Some reference projects from San Francisco, from Manchester, with different construction. This is why I mentioned all these projects with different construction methods, with bubble deck, with hollow core, with precast construction, screed system, concrete system. It doesn't really matter. We can implement all the systems in any type of construction. The Emirates, in China, office buildings, municipal buildings, even in prisons with precast for the room, so the prisoners could have a really nice thermal environment also. Some studies are available for World Green Building Council, and finishing also, I would like you to get your attention to something that is really fresh. I think it's not more than 3 weeks old. It's just gone out. This is an initiative from the World Green Building Council, where us as Uponor are also sponsors for this, is to put the well building practically at the heart of the building. There will be a lot of studies coming out of this initiative, and we are very proud for supporting this. What is more, let's say, fresh for now, that I urge you really to take a look on the internet about this. This is a tool, this is a scheme of how to address the well-being of occupants, users, and employees inside a retail building. So either it is a shopping mall or a big retail store like Harrods, for example, in London. What are the tools that the investor and the owner can really measure? What are the factors that can be really measured that bring value to the building itself by addressing the well-being of people inside? So please take a look. I found it really interesting. It gives practically six different ways of addressing that, depending on the angle that you look at this. Thank you. If you have any questions in English or in translated English, I'll be happy to help.